BREWtally podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is the returning Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage. Their latest album, This Consequence, is out now and has been out for a little while. Hopefully you have picked it up. And/or hopefully you got to see the guys when they were on tour here in the U.S. For the last month and a half. And I know touring-wise, they still got the European Fall Tour and the big summer tour with Beartooth, I Prevail, and Parkway Drive, and a handful of other bands kind of sprinkled throughout some of the dates. But it was really great getting to chat with Jesse. And honestly, I've been alluding over the last handful of episodes about how I was going to, there was an episode coming where you kind of find out about what's been going on and why I put the show on hiatus for a couple of weeks and all that. And it's this one. We get right into it right out the gate. And it's one of those things where I feel like I should just get into it. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Jesse. Let's get into it. So, unbeknownst to you, and this will kind of answer a lot of questions that I've been getting over the last week anyway, so seems serendipitous as it correlates to something you went through, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about it anyway. So in this last week, I kind of stopped doing the podcast for about a week and a half just because a lot of life shit's been going on. And in that, my wife lost her job of 15 years that she's had. And, a six-figure income that comes along with it. And the uncertainty of just life in general the last week. And it's obviously made me kind of really put shit in perspective. My wife has obviously been the breadwinner for our whole relationship. And when, I kind of got the phone call and everything else, obviously I came home to be with my wife and make sure she was okay. And then it was just kind of nose to the grindstone and start hustling and working. And it was a thing knowing that you and I were going to be doing this. I kind of was in my head thinking, about a lot of things, honestly, but was thinking about the trials and tribulations of your last few months of, actually, it was probably even longer than that, but like the shit with your old house. And as I was kind of thinking about it, I was thinking about how over this last week, I feel like my wife and I's relationship has really just kind of bonded even more. It almost goes back to when we first started dating and we didn't have shit because we were young kids. And how those are the things that are more important, not a lot of the extra things that don't strengthen your marriage, your relationship with your person. And so I figured I would kind of start this off kind of heavy, I know, but kind of wanted to ask you, how do you feel what you went through impacted your relationship with your wife? Hopefully for the positive, but what are some things you now being on the other side of all that, what have you kind of taken away from that experience?
Yeah, it's definitely, I live in the deep end, so I'm comfortable jumping right in. It's definitely taxing upon your relationship when you go through these types of things. But if you're able to focus on, like you said, what's important, what really matters, it makes you a team. You're not alone in this. You're facing it together. And whatever you come up against, you lean on each other. That's the beauty of a decent, healthy relationship. I'd say ever since then, we've been through so much between the wedding going sideways, which not a lot of people know about. Like the ceremony was, we spent all this time and money on that, and we get stormed on, like sideways rain, crazy sideways rain. Which kind of shattered childhood dreams for her. It was difficult to pick up the pieces of that. And then moving into, jumping right on tour after that whole incident, which was tough. And then being away from home, getting back, and then immediately dealing with this, having to move our entire lives, we had 20 minutes to get a bag and get our cats and go because the black mold was in the air. And then for the next 3.5 weeks, spending every single dime in my savings to live in Airbnbs until I could find a place, and then having to afford a down payment on a new place. I was absolutely broke, totally broke. Thankfully, able to get back on the road and make the money. But there was definitely some time there where you just have to focus on the fact that I've got my person. She's healthy. We have our cats. We're not homeless. We're able to stay in a place. But that doesn't mean it was easy. Like, it was definitely some weird moments. And, as a man, I mean, I can just speak for myself. I carry that responsibility of like trying to hold up my end of the deal too, and trying to provide as much as I can. So there were moments that were very difficult, but as I look back on it, it absolutely strengthened our bond. And also when you get back on the good foot, which you will, you'll look back on that and it makes you just appreciate the little things that you have. Those moments when you're in bed together before you fall asleep and, your bills are paid for the month, like that's a great feeling. Not a lot of people know what that's like. Most people, I would say most people have anxiety about how the bills are going to be paid. We're a couple of paychecks away from being broke. Most people are like that. But when you have those bills paid and you do have that moment to breathe together, like, to me, that's the stuff of life, the little teeny things. At home, making dinner, watching a movie together, like simple stuff. All the other shit you can figure out. Finances, money comes and goes. Some people have more than others, but I found in my, and this is a side note, but I think it's relevant. I found in my travels and through the world and dealing with many types of people from all different walks of life, most people who are wealthy, who have a lot of money, most of them are not very happy people. Most of them are very dissatisfied. Whereas I've hung out with people in third world countries that are dirt poor, could barely like scrape together a meal, and will offer you a meal, will offer you, come stay in my house, like whatever you need. From Thailand to Mexico, I've been in places of just severe poverty, and those people are joyous. They're fun. They'll bust out a guitar or an instrument and play music for you. They'll show you pictures of their family. They'll tell you stories. They'll break bread with you. So money is not a measure of success or happiness. Money is just this thing that distorts our view of reality, because the true meaning and the true happiness and true wealth, I would say, isn't in your experience. It's in your heart. It's in the way you carry yourself, the people you're surrounded by, the love that you're able to give to people, and the love that you receive. Granted, that doesn't pay your bills, but what's the worst that happens when you can't pay your bills for a little while? You're delinquent on some payments. Hopefully you don't lose your house. That's the worst thought. But like, I would assume if you're working towards a goal, most people will be safe and they'll be able to get by. It just makes you view money and finances and bills and all these things in a totally different light. And it also makes you look at your relationship with not just your partner, but the people who will come to your rescue and during those times quietly, like come, because we had people that came to I didn't say a word about it. I'm not the type of person to ask for help. And in fact, during that time, a fan tried to open up a, what do you call those things?
GoFundMe.
I had to shut it down because I'm like, that's so sweet, but I can't do that. Even if I didn't need the money at that moment, eventually my career would have helped and I would have been okay. But to see that is beautiful. And people might start to do that when they know you're suffering, as long as you're open about what you're going through. If you have a good circle of friends or family, people will quietly just help you or even loan you something, like I had people offer, like, I can loan you to get by and I know you're good for it, pay me back. Like, so those types of things start to come out too. And you realize that you've got it really good, hopefully for most people, like life goes on. And when you look back on these times that are difficult, the lessons learned help you appreciate, number one, and number two, like, prevent that from happening again. I think for me, like, I had to drain my savings. So now, like, I am building that savings back up again, because God forbid, you never know what's going to happen. I could lose my voice. I could get hit by a car and be paralyzed. Like, there's so many ifs, ands, and buts, like things that could go wrong in your life. You can't worry about them and have anxiety about them, because that's not going to change shit. But from the lessons you've learned from your past, you can prepare to face these situations better and have more strength and have more wisdom with it. But every situation is different. And the bottom line is, if you need help, you got to ask people. That's what I learned too. Just speak up, say it. It's the same thing with your mental health.
Yeah.
Finances are something everyone can relate to. And the people who have might help the people who have not. Hopefully, I would do it for somebody for sure. So yeah, it's difficult, but that's part of life, man. We all have ups and downs. It's just when it happens suddenly that.
Yeah, I think the thing that was really interesting, and it's kind of funny, approaching now. I mean, you are gonna basically, I think, be the second to last episode before the 500th episode mark for me. And so, like, I've got all those done already because I'm doing a full week of like my favorite guests. Although the Ken Susi episode I dropped that like broke the internet for a week, that was one of them. But it was interesting because like I just kind of hit this point where like mentally and physically I was like, the podcast like isn't the priority right now. Like I need to work, and work was really busy, and then I just needed to like focus on my personal relationship like with my wife and my personal life. And I just made like a quick thing like, hey, the podcast is kind of going to go on a hiatus for like a hot minute, and just in case anyone asked. And it was interesting to see the outpouring of support, like those that actually had my phone number. Like Ken was one of the first to call me like the next morning. And even like my podcast sponsor was like, hey man, like if you just crank out a bunch of episodes and need some money, like let me know, I'll get you paid, like just if it'll help you. And it was kind of surreal, like to see a network of people that I wouldn't have known 9 years ago through just doing this endeavor. To even my wife and I were talking yesterday, and she was making a comment. She's like, it's so weird to suddenly after 15 years, just your whole identity's gone. And it was interesting because I've asked that question so many times. I think I even asked it to you when we had previously talked about like, how hard is it to walk away from something and the identity that you and or the perception of you from everybody else is gone now. And now you have to not only reconcile that with yourself, but other people. And it was kind of interesting to be able to pull back on like a couple years worth of different people's experiences going through that and offering her those words of wisdom from other people. And it was one of those things where I was suddenly kind of grateful in multifacets of having this thing that I've just carved out for myself out of just a desire to do something and to kind of connect more one-on-one with people, which I think we sadly are missing out on in this digital world we live in. But it felt good to be able to offer my wife something that typically is the thing that keeps us separate for a couple hours a week or so. And so it was just kind of like a really interesting, like a lot of full circle moments kind of for me over this last week. Like I said, just thinking about a lot of things and the relationships that I built over the years and just kind of being like, wow, I guess not being a shitty person is actually like, it pays off, like not monetarily, but just the wealth you get for the community you've built around you.
That is the beauty of it. And I think that's wealth right there. What you just said, that's the stuff that keeps you going and makes you appreciate life, the simple things of life. I think the perception is just warped through social media, through media, through movies, whatever. What we're spoon-fed, force-fed, I should say, is luxury travel. People who just pose to be a certain type of person, and the envy and the comparison and all that. But if you really just are present to your life and count your blessings, most people, I would say, would be able to find a lot of things they're very grateful for. The fact that you even have a roof over your head or a place to sleep at night, start there. I talk to people all the time about this. Like, go to your most basic thing. If you are not starving, you're not homeless right now, you're ahead of a lot of people, man. There's a lot of suffering in this world. So to be able to count your small blessings and look around you, like you said, your community of people, those are the people that are going to raise you up. And it comes back around. Like you said, if you're a decent person living a decent life, I believe in instant karma. I do believe what you give comes back to you at some point in this lifetime.
You know, I think something that you've been pretty vocal about in just about anything you've done is kind of the overcoming of hardships and the teaching moments that life will present to you if you pay attention. Something you and I, in our various discourse through like Instagram DMs and stuff, we've kind of had pseudo conversations about psychedelics and stuff. And I think something for me that's really been interesting over the last few years of kind of more diving into that, in addition to having therapy tools to kind of work through things as well, is sort of the shedding of the ego and stuff, and just kind of dealing with life as it's literally presented to you, and where do you go, and tackling the issues maybe you've been putting off. What are some things maybe through that, or just in general, that had like life lessons that you feel are invaluable that you've learned through the hardships and adversities and teaching moments in general?
Yeah, I'd start off by saying that I know that psychedelic therapy can work wonders. And most, if not all, of the pharmaceutical drugs are modeled after what nature gives us. So for me, I've always, since as far back as I can remember, especially having worked in the medical field for a while, I am very anti big pharma. I am very anti pills and all that stuff. And again, to each their, I will always say this, to each their own. If something's working for you, go for it. But for me, things in the pharmaceutical realm, the side effects, all the stuff that comes with it, it's just not worth it. If you can find a good teacher, a good guy, someone who can guide you through doing microdosing psychedelic therapy, and occasionally doing a more heroic dose, as we say, vision questing. I did that pretty substantially for, I want to say, at least 5 to 6 years, on a fairly regular basis, microdosing. And these days, I don't really have to anymore. I went through such a transformation, and the elasticity in the brain. Like, science used to say that you can't change your personality. Like, once you've sort of established in who you are in your 30s or whatever, that's not going to really change. But I'm here to tell you, and there's studies about this as well, you can change, and psychedelic therapy can help rewire the neurons in your brain. My social anxiety changed substantially through that, where I would enter a room of people and like immediately like, freeze up, and like being on stage, having a hard time making eye contact, little things like that. And I just pushed past it. And it was because of, you mentioned ego, like an ego death is such an important thing when you're talking about, I would say therapy in general, not just psychedelic therapy. Yeah, therapy absolutely. In general, realizing that the world does not revolve around you. You have to be humble enough to realize that, number one, you've got to ask for help. There are people out there who are willing to help. That reciprocation of energy is so important. And I would also say getting therapy and talking to an actual therapist is wonderful, as long as you can find the right one. Mm-hmm. There are people out there who are really, like, their life goal is to help people. They're angels, but there are also people who are, clock watchers who just want to make the money. It exists. So to take your time to find the right guidance, whether that be through psychedelic therapy, or through just speaking therapy, psychotherapy, making sure that you do trial and error. With psychedelics, it was, there were times where I took a little too much. I was like, this is a lot. Then there are times you take just a little bit and you kind of get this warm, fuzzy feeling. And every once in a while, I'll dip into mushrooms, like small little microdose. And the after effects, like it's for anyone who's never done it, it's just this, you kind of experience joy. You kind of experience like a wonderment, especially if you're out in the woods, which I tend to do mushrooms strictly out in the woods. It reminds you again of the simple things in life, the beautiful things, like something like sitting by a river or watching bees pollinate flowers, like little things like that every day you just like, yeah, that's there. Mushrooms sort of make you, or psychedelics in general, tend to make you really pay attention to those things. And what happens in your brain, at least for me, is it reminds you of where we all come from, the innocence of a child. When you come out of the womb with this innocence of wonderment and not knowing how the world works. And as we get older, our brains just get flooded with all this negativity, with all this anxiety, with all these, worrying about paying bills, worrying about our mortgage, worrying about what the neighbors think, keeping up with the Jones, like all these things that just don't fucking matter. And if you're able to strip all that bullshit away, which some people can do through meditation, which I'll get to in a second. But I feel like psychedelic therapy is a fast forward button. It's kind of like putting you in an advanced therapy. You're skipping a bunch of steps. And some people need that. If you're talking about suicidal depression, where you're just in a really dark spot and you need to sort of press the fast forward button, it does that. It did that for me. It took me out of a dark suicidal mindset and put me into a space of wonderment and rediscovering not only like the world around me through nature, but like who am I? The beauty that is inside me. And this may sound funny to people, but I started to fall in love with myself again, realizing that I have a lot of good qualities. I have things about me that I like. And I learned to enjoy my own company even better through therapy. But yeah, fast forward to now, I really don't dabble as much. I'm very sort of, I don't mind, long periods of just being sober, even just putting booze away. I still enjoy drinking here and there, but, I used to be a drink every day guy years ago, like just not even like to get drunk. It was just habit, like wine with my meal, beer when I'm doing the lawn, like just drink. And it's starting to take its toll on me. So I've put all that stuff behind me and I live, I can go for a couple of weeks and be completely sober and I'm fine. I enjoy life. I sleep good. I like little things like watching movies, having a couple of cookies at night as my little snack, like that, little things, normal human being things are great. But I've also found recently meditation has been huge. And I think meditation is the slow road. You talk about psychedelics, you talk about, getting a buzz with your alcohol to relax yourself. Meditation is the wise, slow road to all of that. Learning how to breathe properly, even just breath work will change you. And you're able to withstand stress differently. You react differently because if you train your body in the stress responses to breathe, because when you get stressed, that's when your breath gets short. When you get anxious, when you're worried, like you are tensing up and you're breathing very short. If you're aware of that and you can unwind that and sort of go into that meditative state, it might take, some training, a couple of days, or, I can tap into it within about 20 minutes. I can change my mind just through breathing and meditation. So all of those things are important. I think the bottom line with what we're getting at is your growth as a human, investing time into yourself. Because you're no good to anybody. You're no good to your partner, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your mom, your dad, whoever is needing you in the world, who wants you to show up, to see who you genuinely are. You can't be of any use to anyone if you're not okay within yourself. So it's all about doing the work. And it's work. It's a daily thing. If you're really fighting to be present and to try to find some semblance of happiness in this world, you got to work on a regular basis. And not every day is going to be good, but it's reveling in those good days. In those days that aren't so good, putting in the work, or allowing yourself to be sad, allowing yourself a day to like binge watch something and sort of mend yourself. All of that is important. It's the process of self-development that I think is super important for any of us as human beings, in our personal lives, the way we view the world and how we interact with this world. All of that is encompassed in mental health. And I would even say spirituality. For me, I've found a lot of comfort in my faith that there's something greater than all of us. I don't have to call it a specific thing, but I have this feeling, and I've gotten this from psychedelics as well. This feeling like this is too beautiful and too intelligent and too profound to just happen every day. There's got to be something sewing it into the fabric of life. What is that? I don't know, but I've had hints of it on a regular basis. The more I search, the more I question. This all-encompassing, like I said, process of self-development it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's why we're here. That's why we exist, is to improve upon ourselves, to hopefully help improve upon other people, to hopefully make some kind of a positive impact in the world.
I think what gets interesting, and for those listening, as of when we're recording this today, you posted on your Instagram story of getting in possibly colder than an ice bath, a freshly unfrozen river or whatever, and kind of doing meditation and stuff like that in that for, I think you said like 10 minutes and breathing techniques and such. And it's interesting, like the little bit I've tried dabbling in that. And part of me isn't sure if it's the place that this happened, because one of the very few instances where I've gotten meditation to quote unquote work for me was a place that I go to that's kind of my recharge, which is Atlanta. There's something about it there that it's the closest thing that I've ever felt to like where I live now, because I'm not from here in Grand Rapids, but it's a thing where like when I come downtown from somewhere else and I see like the skyline, I'm like, I'm home. And I had that same feeling one time driving to Atlanta from here, where I was coming down the highway, coming into the downtown area. The sun was rising, and I'm like, oh, fuck, man, I'm home. But it's not my home. But it's the only time I've ever felt that feeling that I get when I come here. But there was a time where I was waiting for my wife and some friends, and a friend of mine was like, oh, you should try TM here's some kind of like guided meditations and such. And there was something that happened, like maybe it was just I was on a patio kind of higher up with the trees, so that's kind of more nature-y kind of centered. And at one point, like I could literally feel me leaving kind of my body and kind of wandering down a road that I've never been in. And ironically, when we walked down it later, I was like, oh, I fucking saw this. I saw this like 7 hours ago. I've never walked down this street. I knew that like down to a detail of like a painting that was on like a graffiti painting that was on this building. I was like, oh, I know that's there, but I'd never seen it. And it was one of those things where almost to use like a drug term, like I've tried doing TM and some other meditation since, and I don't know if I'm like chasing that high of that first time where it really kind of clicked. And I just can't, either because of other extenuating circumstances for me, where it's just, I'm not letting that clarity come in. But it is something like when I talk to other people about it that do it, they're like, that's it, you were in it. And that's what it can do. It can take you, it can transform you into some other places. And when you're able to kind of tap into that a lot more frequently, you kind of, like you said, you're able to kind of calm yourself down. You can kind of just change everything that's going on. And that was a big thing going to therapy that I had to deal with, was I was not great at being present. And in the moment, I would try to solve so many hypothetical what ifs just to be quote unquote prepared for them. And that, in addition to psychedelics, of just being present, dealing with what I can deal with right now in this moment, and then proceeding forward with the information I have. And I think that's been the interesting thing on my journey of trying to be a better me. In whatever capacity that looks like. So I always like talking to other people that are a little bit more in tune with that, because maybe there's something that you have found that works for you that I can kind of glean from and be like, all right, let's try this thing Jesse said works for him.
Yeah, as far as the TM, the transcendental meditation, I often think of deja vu. We have these like moments of like, I have absolutely been here before. This is wild. And I think through things like that, and I also think through dreams. If you look at the psychedelic experience, you look at a drug like DMT, which I've had the privilege and pleasure to do 3 times now. It's the same thing that goes on in your head when you're dreaming, or when you die, before you die. So we have that in us. We have the ability to see past ourselves. We have the ability to tap into the spiritual realm, and we do it every night when we go to bed, whether we're aware of it or not, whether you remember your dream or not. Like, I've had dreams where I've dreamt of a place and I finally go to the place and I'm like, I have been here before in my dreams. This is wild. Tears streaming down my face. Like, what the, like, we all have that ability. But I think, through, the chemicals in our food, through the sugars, or all the junk, through the alcohol, through the drug, like everything we put in our bodies to sort of dim our light, and our pineal gland. I've been reading a lot about that, how we do have a third eye. We actually have the ability, and you think about how much of our brains we actually use according to science. So what's going on in there that we don't know about? There's so much to tap into, and meditation does that. Psychedelic therapy does that. Therapy does that. Even getting hypnotized. Like, what is that? It's tapping into those things that we don't even have access to when we're conscious of it, or repressed memory of people who remember something from their childhood that they forgot. The brain stopped remembering it for the sake of survival.
That literally happened to me like a few months ago, and it was fucking wild to be like and sorry to cut you off, but it was so wild to have a family member mention something, and then I was transported literally back to that instance, the thing they were telling me about. I was like, I fucking remember that now. I didn't remember that being a thing. I've never thought of it. I had no recollection of it. But in that moment, it was, to like use Inside Out. It was like the fucking core memory ball came and was just like, boom, here's the thing you forgot. And it's like, holy shit. Like, that was something like wild. And then kind of dealing with that like in real time as well. Again, like as an adult and kind of reconciling childhood trauma.
It makes me think of fight or flight, something that I'm sure people have heard over and over again. But when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with extreme circumstances, the brain has this insane way of you've got to survive, right? So the brain's job is to push you towards survival. So if you apply that train of thought to anything, it's fascinating. And this again is why I just can't not believe there's something more than us, because we're programmed. We're literally, our brains, our genetics, our, what's the word I'm looking for? The things that we do inherently from our ancestry that we don't know why.
Predisposed.
Right. So where does it all come from? Where's the beginning point of that? For us as a species, something I think about a lot. And that's why, to me, those deep thoughts, like I love depth. I love great conversations. I love reading literature. I love poetry. I love all the dorky, sciencey stuff talking about the brain. Like, to me, it's just fascinating, because to me, it's a quest for truth. That's where I'm at in my life. I'm looking for the truth. And what is the truth? If you believe the truth is an absolute pillar that does not move left, right, straight, it is just, the truth is this. And everybody perceives it differently. What is that truth? So that's been my quest of life since I sort of like reawakened my brain out of a very religious home into what I consider myself to be, I guess you'd say generically, spiritually speaking, and having been traveling the world and seeking out, like, what makes this Buddhist monk seek truth? What makes this monastic Catholic monk that lives in the mountains, like, speaking to people like this, like, where do you get your truth from? And a common line, going back again, a common line is meditation. Meditation, using the power of your brain. And when we're caught up in our daily stuff, we're just doing this all the time. We're constantly cutting the depth out of our brain, our attention spans. Like, we're destroying our spiritual brains with technology, with all these magnets that surround us, with the lights, the computer. So when you strip all that away, and that's why nature, to me, and anyone I've spoken to that deals with meditation, you must, in order for you to really get to the core and the depth of who you are and what you're seeking, you've got to get away from the machines. You've got to be in nature. If you just go sit in the middle of the forest somewhere, away from tourists, away from backpackers, find a spot alone. And if you have a day where you don't see another human being and you just spend time with yourself, no phone, no nothing, you're going to meditate at some point without even realizing that you're doing it. And that's an important thing to note when you're talking about growth as a human being and where we are in society now. You have to isolate. People who don't isolate will never get to the core of who they are. You can go to therapy for 10 years and not get the answer that you're looking for. But if you go out and find, and this is why monks do what they do. This is why that monastic life, you see movies about this monk in the mountains, and he's like, yeah, that's true, because they're alone. They're not affected by modern technology, and they're hearing a voice. They're listening to something that is there. Call it what you will. I call it the voice of God. It's there. it speaks to us. It's so important to just disconnect and go out in nature. And that to me is where I really learned about what meditation actually is. It doesn't have to be hours you sitting in a position going, oh, like it can be 2 minutes of clarity and breath work, and it'll change your entire day. So what I do is I try to start my day with just basic stuff. And as we were talking about in the top of this podcast, I list off in my head what I'm grateful for. I say thank you, and I just reach for all the things in my mind that I'm grateful for. I say a little prayer, I do some breath work, and then I start my day. And if I start my day that way, no matter what I face, there's a calmness about me for the most part, that I can face the day with a certain mindset. And I can affect people in a certain way because I'm training myself to be in this mindset. And that's another thing. You've got to be disciplined to take time to do it on a regular basis. And you'll see an incredible growth in your brain and your whole demeanor. You can change who you are through that work.
I think the thing that was, and these kind of now are forever linked, turning 40 last year, and then literally the day of my 40th birthday was the first day after like 3 months after my foot surgery, where I could be like, I could walk around on like the little, like in a cast thing, like an air cast type thing. So I could be weight bearing. But it was interesting. Like I've talked about just the isolation of feeling, and this is how I felt, feeling worthless and a burden because I couldn't do anything. Like I couldn't walk. I couldn't really go anywhere. I couldn't do much. It's like, you can lay in bed, you can sit on a couch. That's about it. And I remember having this sort of epiphany listening to this band LLNN. They had this album Unmaker that a friend had showed me. And it felt like essentially the soundtrack to Event Horizon. If someone made like a metal version of Event Horizon, just bleak and dark and hopeless and all that kind of stuff. And I would listen to it at the late hours of the night when there was no friends to text, nothing. I was bored of TV. I was bored of everything. And I just had to sit there. And it taught me though that, you know, kind of again, being present and being in the moment and what can you deal with right now? And I remember realizing and coming to the realization that sometimes it's okay to just wallow in something and just fucking let it swallow you and feel it all, to then go, okay, we're done with that. Now we move forward. Yeah. And giving yourself kind of that grace to do that. Because something you said that I think stands out is I think a lot of people aren't comfortable with themselves. They're not comfortable in those silent moments because you have nothing else to avoid the things in your head that you've been putting off. You don't have any distractions. You have to deal with what's present in front of you. And sometimes that's putting up a mirror to the things that you're not happy with about yourself. And that's so fucking hard to tackle those things with real wanting to really change that. And I know for me, like, you know, thinking about even just leading up to the surgery of like, where the fuck do I put my life on hold for 3 months? That's so hard. It's so hard to look at it and be like, I guess not making any money for 3 months, can't do anything, can't, like, just looking at a calendar and going, where does that fit into my life ever? It doesn't.
Yeah, that's profound. And if you've never been through that type of situation, it's hard to describe to people. You know, purpose, I think that's the word that sticks out in my head. If you don't feel like you have purpose, that is a dark place to be in, you know, and I definitely felt that through the pandemic a little bit, you know, having my whole life. I mean, all of us, we all know that, what that's like, you know, but that, you know, teaches you such huge lessons, and you have to, like you said, sometimes you do have to wallow in it. Sometimes you just let the sadness wash over you. Let the grief, let the disappointment, whatever the case may be, face that shit. Don't numb it. Don't run from it. Eventually it's going to catch up to you, unless you're just, you know, drinking it away. Or, you know, I know people they drink to just numb the pain of their past, to numb the pain of their mistakes. And it's going to catch up to you one day, or you're just going to kill yourself slowly. And, you know, I refuse to live that way. I refuse. I think once you face your darkness and you can wallow in it, when you come out of it, it's so much more rewarding because you're not running. You've stopped running. And I like to keep mentioning the word present. I think that's been my goal as a partner, as a husband, as a brother, as a friend, or as a bandmate, is to strive to be present to people when they're speaking to me, to learn how to listen better, and also how I respond and how I respond to myself, my inner thoughts, the darkness, the light. And you mentioned yesterday me going into the freezing water. And I would say this, first of all, the environment that I live in, like just outside that window, if I were to pull up in the shade, the river is right there. So I have it on the property that I live on, which is great. So having that access is number one, unless you have like a cold plunge bath. But I would see these guys get into these jump into these cold plunge baths and and deal with it. And like, that's one way you can do it, I guess. But I'm assuming the average person doesn't really want to do that. And I knew, like, I tried it a few times. Like, this sucks, like not fun. But what I did yesterday was, I put my feet in and it was like pain. Like, it was so cold, it was painful. And I had it in for maybe 20 seconds. And then I was like, all right, out. And I stood there on the shore and I went through a 5-minute slow process of feet back in, up to my ankles, out, in. Okay, not as bad. Doing these Wim Hof breathing, which if you guys don't know Wim Hof, look up Wim Hof breathing. He is a genius. The guy is like climbed to Everest with shorts on. Like, he's just a mastermind of breathing. So his basic breathing techniques to deal with the cold, I was doing that. Pretty soon I'm up to my knees, et cetera, hips, waist, getting my crotch under. That was the one I was like, because like dudes know, like, that was painful. But after about 5 minutes, I was in a horse stance, doing my breathing, holding it. I got down to my chest here and I sat and I found myself, the pain sensors in your body that are telling you to get out, it's cold, the survival, that shuts off. And what washes over you is just this calmness. If you're doing the breathing right, you're controlling your thoughts, because your brain's telling you, get the fuck out. We're going to die. That's the first thing your brain's going to be doing. You can slowly work your way into that situation. And once you're there, man, I was watching the sun reflecting off the river as it was cruising by me. I could hear bird song like I've never heard it before. It was just me, my breath, and Mother Nature. And I was in there for about 10 minutes, because my wife was on the shore, sunning and enjoying the warmth of the day. And I'm just in there like, I have to do this. There was something within me that was like, do this. I was called to do it. I can't explain it. And after about 10 minutes, I got up. I got back out into the shore and I stood there. And I realized for those 10 minutes, all I was focusing on was my breath, the river, nature. I wasn't thinking about, I got to go on tour next week. I wasn't thinking about, I've got a bunch of projects to catch up. I've got handwritten lyrics I got to do. There are people waiting for me. Gone. I didn't think about it once. I wasn't even aware that I wasn't thinking about it because it was so in it. So I would say this, for anyone who's looking for, number one, you're interested in the cold plunge and all its health benefits, which it does really help with joint pain, inflammation, all that stuff. And if you're interested in meditation, to combine the two can be done. But I would suggest, if you can, do it slow. Go slowly, dip your feet in, let your feet, come back out, slowly back and forth, until you're able to, because your body will adjust slowly. And then when you get to that point, man, there's something that happens between the brain and body connection. You just let go. And again, I'm tying it back into the survival thing, the way the brain works, the chemistry of the brain, your personality, all that stuff, man. If you're practicing meditation, breathing techniques, and, cold plunges, that's a fast track to mental health awareness, to spirituality, to all those things. And I'm addicted. I can't stop thinking about what I did yesterday. I'm doing it tomorrow. Except this time I'm going to build a fire on the shore so I can. But in general, I highly recommend it, and I've seen all these cold plunge things because it's such a trend, and I'm like, like bro dudes doing cold plunges. Great, whatever. I don't care. But like doing it the way that I did it, to me personally, it's a wholly different world. It's a totally different world. And you're so much more aware of nature speaking to you. And I don't know. It was a moment that I can't really describe. I'll just simply say that I'm hooked. I'm going to be doing it a lot more now, and I just the power of the mind is astounding. And if you're able to harness just a little bit of that to help you on your daily routines, your daily life, your daily struggles, it's there. There's so many different techniques and people with methods that will. I mentioned Wim Hof, guy's a genius. Look him up. The process of self-development. It's a beautiful thing. If you take it seriously and you really are trying to make an impact within yourself, that impact will spread to others eventually because you're just filled with it. Like I'm just filled with all this information because I work on a regular basis with the life that I live. And it feels good to speak about it, to think that somebody out there might hear something I'm saying and like it might help them. I love that. That gives me a sense of purpose.
Something else I wanted to talk to you about, because I do think this is a really big part of life in general. And I would even say, I hate to just dumb it down to this, but I think it's something men need to work more at in my personal experiences. So I know when you and Adam especially were kind of doing the initial press junket for the record for this cycle, both of you had kind of talked about the process of recording the album and how you guys kind of went back to more like the beginning of when you guys writing music together and everything as a band. But something that kind of really stood out to me was, the mentioning of the band kind of coming to you and being like, we think you can do better lyrically. And it's interesting because you don't really hear anyone say that. And because I don't think people want to like kind of air out quote unquote dirty laundry. But to me, when I heard that, I thought that was so fascinating because as someone who, likes communicating and learning how other people work together and tribal knowledge and all these kind of things, the thing I took away from it is I was like, you guys must be so secure in who you all are, and especially as a unit together, that all you want is the best for and out of each other. And that's potentially a little bit of uncomfortableness of being like, hey, dude, like, we know you're capable of more than what you're doing. Fucking let it rip.
Yeah.
To me, being able to take, I would call it constructive criticism, it usually shuts a lot of people down. Can you talk a little bit more about that process of going through that, and maybe even, were you always good at handling negative criticism, and then maybe how it maybe has strengthened the line of communication between you guys since this happened?
Yeah, I would say the early version of me 6-7 years ago, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Not so good. I'm very emotionally wrapped up in my art and what I write and who I am and how I present myself. And I saw it to me as just passion. It's a part of who I am, like take it or leave it. But I would say through my current relationship, the woman I'm married to now, when I met her, she met a broken version of me. She met a guy who was just like coming out of a really terrible divorce and trying to figure out who I was. And it's a lot of broken pieces there. And she had the patience and wherewithal, and vice versa, me with her too. We sort of sharpened each other. And one thing that I learned more than anything from her is, number one, being brutally honest, and also just being present and learning how to communicate better. And all of those things don't come easy. I tend to be a very sort of, I used to be very like introverted, and I'd rather, what's the term? It's the, you shut down and you avoid confrontation, like anything to avoid confrontation. Being a people pleaser, like, yeah, whatever you guys want, it's fine. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Deep down inside, I might be gutted and like having a really hard time with it, but no problem. Fine. I'll take care of it. I'll do whatever, bending over backwards for people, whether it be in my career or my relationships or with my family. Like, I'll take the brunt of everything. You guys go do your thing. I got this. And I'm dying over here. So there was a lot of things I had to work on. And a big part of that was accepting the fact that, like, I'm not the greatest, man. I've got flaws. I've got things I need to work on. And when I started doing that in my personal life and taking ownership of my flaws and the shittiness and the ugliness that can come to bear when you suppress, people please, and then explode because you're so overwhelmed, I had to dismantle that ticking time bomb. So what is it that makes me tick? Why am I like this? What am I, I just went through this whole thing, not just for, my relationship to thrive, but for me, like, again, I can't show up genuinely me unless I've been doing the work. So apply that to the band, walking into this new album. What do I have to say? Who am I? Like, all of those things just kind of like came down heavy on me. And I thought I had some direction and I thought I had an idea for what I want to do for this record. But when my peers, my brothers, the 4 guys that I've been writing with for so long that know me really well as a musician and a writer were saying, this isn't it. That initially, it was hard. It was hard to swallow that pill. And of course, I'll never forget it. It was the day that I think it was like my 6th demo got denied. And I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't take it. I remember shutting my computer after, talking to those guys and just like numb and going out into the woods, which I always do by myself, and sort of going over the conversation in my head, remembering what was said, how they said it, dissecting all these things. And instead of allowing it to make me implode and like go crazy and be insecure, it was like, well, what's the alternative? The alternative is, how do I improve? The alternative is, well, what if they're right? Guess what? They're right because they're saying it. Never really had that kind of criticism from them before. It was pretty intense. But because I've been working on myself, because I've been doing the work with me as a human being, me as an artist had to catch up to that. And I actually was listening to an interview with Rick Rubin, a great music producer. And he's also got a really interesting podcast with some interesting guests. But he said something along the lines of, the art shouldn't define the artist. The art should be a separate thing. So if you're writing a song, the song isn't you, it's the song. And when you're in a band setting, that song represents 4, 5, 6 other people. It's not just you. So if they don't like what you're doing with this song, separate your ego from that and realize it's the song that needs work. So for me, I was able to take their criticism and go, you know what? They don't dislike me. They just don't like the work that I'm doing. And I was able to sort of like, because of what Rick Rubin said, as simple as it was, allow the art, your song, whatever you're working on, to be a separate entity and just be you, allow that to be that, and do the work, show up, be disciplined. So that was it. I was like, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to sit in my studio every single day. I'm going to go out for bike rides. I'm going to go for hikes. I'm going to work on the songs in my head, come to the studio, and discipline myself to just put in the work. And even if what I come out with sucks, even if you get a sentence out of 2 pages, just do the work. Show up for yourself, discipline yourself, and do the work. I apply that to my personal life. Why would I not apply that to my artistic life? So I started doing that. And I tapped into my frustration at the time and my anger with myself and the situation and like just everything we came out of through the pandemic. I suppressed so much anger and frustration. So it was a moment of truth that day, coming back from the woods and sitting and going, all right, I've got to tell the real story here. What's the real story? I'm not okay. Why am I not okay? I'm frustrated. I'm angry, not just with this current situation with this record, but I drew a line all the way back into my past and like tapped into what has made me even get into heavy music. Why did I love heavy music so much? What was it about heavy music that I loved so much as a young punk rock kid? It's because I could relate to the anger, the frustration, the pain. And that's when the eureka moment happened, where I've got to tap into that. I got to remember what that 14-year-old kid, when he first heard Minor Threat, why did he love it so much? I've got to write songs that are going to give that type of energy. So the first one I came out with was Broken Glass, which came from Bottled Violence, Minor Threat. The song starts, you hear, psh, it was like broken glass. What does broken glass mean to me? And I just went off on this song about abuse. And that's, the fire just sparked up within me. And I was just able to like start writing these demos. And the guys were like, there it is. That's it right there. So just tapping into that primal rage that I think a lot of us carry and don't even realize it. You know, I'm a pretty calm, collected, person when you deal with me, but deep inside there is a rage within me because I hate the way the world is. I hate how we treat each other. There's so much that I'm dissatisfied and angry about. So I tapped into that shit, and that's made me a better person. It's made me more communicative, more self-aware, and a better writer and a better musician.
I think the thing I remember saying to you, and I think even Mike, when I had gotten the advanced copy of the record, was I was like, this feels important. Like, you can sonically feel it. Emotionally, you can feel it. Like, you put it on and it just feels like it had to come out of all of you right now. And I hate to say, like, not all the last few records don't feel that way, but there's just not that same immediacy necessarily to me. And to me, that's where I think the medium of music is so interesting, that it's like, it's a snapshot for you, but at the same time, it evokes so many things out of people. But it's interesting when you can feel that, like, that anger and that immediacy of like, this had to fucking come out of me right now.
Yeah.
To be able to capture that onto an album and to literally have it be something that you can feel doesn't happen that often anymore. And I don't know if it's just because people are afraid to be that raw and vulnerable, or if and this is probably more it, if the industry, just because of how long it takes, like, your guys are going to put out this record in Q3. So start getting ready for that now. And you're like inspiration doesn't happen like that. It's not just like, turn it on and like, now be ready in 3 months to get ready to write and record everything. It just doesn't happen like that. So it's always interesting to me, like, when I see those things happen, when a record like that exists, it's like, oh man, like this, I'm interested to see how this grows, because I think this is going to be one of those where the immediacy makes me feel a certain way. But then when I sit with it for a different season, literally and figuratively, what's going to resonate when I listen to it then? Another year or two from now, what is it going to, like, what's going to resonate? Like, even like something like Alive or Just Breathing, I threw that on the other day. And as a 40-year-old listening to it, it's like, I get a completely different message out of it than I did when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And it's weird that music can do that, but I think it has to come from a source of honesty to be able to do that and to grow.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you mentioned the word source. I love that word. Because I think when I'm at my best as a writer, I'm channeling something outside of myself. And it's very much, to me, the existentialism in my writing comes from that. When I'm humble, when I'm open, or when I'm desperate and I'm down and I'm broken and feeling awful, sometimes that's when I do my best writing, because I'm just desperate for answers. That being said, I have to give a lot of credit to the guys that I work with. Like, those guys saw the potential in me, called me out when I wasn't delivering. And because of them, I was able to be pushed to that point where I had to strip it all away and remember why I even got into this shit. And if you're able to write from a place of honesty, period, somebody's going to latch onto it somewhere. And hopefully, like you said, with Alive or Just Breathing, I hear it a lot, and I'm so grateful. It's fairly timeless with people because the message isn't super specific. I write in such a way where I know what I'm getting at, but as a writer, I really want other people to sort of gather their own idea of what this may be about. So I try to write with 3 points in mind. The initial thought of why I wrote this song, and then as I'm developing the song, being careful of the wording that I'm using so that way it doesn't put you into a corner where you're like, oh, this song's about a breakup. Ugh. Like, no, it might actually be about spiritual heartache. Like My Last Serenade is a great example of that. People heard the song, saw the video, they're like, it's about a breakup. It's really not. Like, I mean, yeah, you could say it is, but I wrote that from an existential point of view of just like people in your life, a situation in your life, a religion, if you will, where you realize I can't live this way anymore. Like, so long, I can't hold on to this energy anymore. I can't believe this anymore. I can't be around these types of people anymore. I can't live with this philosophy anymore. So if you're able to write in such a way where the listener can automatically go, oh, this makes me think of my girlfriend, or this makes me think of my grandfather who passed away. And the story that they come up with is powerful. And I facilitated that by being general enough. Like, that's the buzz for me, writing a song where people come to me and tell me their story, and I just take it on. And I'm like, Always is another good example, a song that I wrote that was pretty specific. And then it turned into sort of a general idea of the presence of the loved ones around us. And people have played that song at their weddings. They've played it at funerals. And I've heard some profound stories. And some of the meanings behind the songs that people tell me is deeper than the whole reason I even wrote the song. That's the beauty of art, I think. It's in the eyes of the beholder. And the moment you've created something, you've put it out into the world, number one, you're successful. So remember that as an artist, that just because you didn't make money off it, if you've created something and you were brave enough to put it out into the world, be it a painting, a piece of clothing, a work of art, music, you're successful, number one, because you did it. You have the guts to just do it. And then number two, it's no longer yours. It's not. It's whoever is observing it. And I love that about art. I can put all my blood, sweat, and tears and guts into this thing. But the moment I release it to the world, it's no longer mine. I have to abandon it to a certain degree and allow you as the listener, as the one who's perceiving it, to have that experience. I would never take that experience away from you by over-explaining something or writing a song that is so obviously just this. I don't really find joy in that. So that's something I've worked very consciously on and very hard on. But also, digging deep into a thesaurus, for example, and loving a word, but knowing I've used it so many times. So how do I say this differently? This record was totally me go like deep dive into a thesaurus and like, don't want to repeat that word. How do I say that roughly with another word? And what does that other word mean? And changing the meaning of a song through a word, it can happen so easily. And I love that about the written word. I'm obsessed with words and language because of that. And that was all in this record. All of that is in this record.
I know you got to get going here real quickly. So I'll kind of throw you one question and then kind of wrap this up. But, you are someone that always champions and actively promotes things that you're passionate about and that you're into. How important is that for you as an artist and just as a person to share the things that inspire you?
Yeah, I think I go through phases. I think I go through phases where I just pull away from putting myself out there because I need to do my own thing and recharge. And sometimes I feel like I don't have something worthy to say. But when I'm in that mindset where I think this happens a lot when I'm on tour, especially the first couple of weeks of tour, because I'm on such a buzz, such a high, where my brain is kicking. Or if I'm writing a record and caffeine and as soon as I get a cup of coffee in me, I'm like, oh. When I'm in that place where I feel the need to share something on social media or whatever, it's greater than just the satisfaction of putting it out there and watching people like it or comment. I don't really care about that. It's nice to get compliments. It's nice when people like it. 3,000 likes and somebody's like, this is great. That feels nice, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I feel like I fucking have to. If I had this profound thought to me that helped me that day, and it seems so simple and so like, I wish someone would just say that to me. I'm like, I gotta say this. I gotta turn the camera on when I'm in the middle of the woods meditating. I'm like, I had this thought. I just want to share it. I have a YouTube channel that I do not take care of at all. But if you go on the YouTube channel, there's like 10-minute video of me sitting in the woods saying something. There's a couple of those. And I look back on those, I'm like, dude, that was a great day. Because what I'm saying, I could use that right now. So to me, it's not just me. I humbly say this, I'm channeling something else. Call it the collective consciousness. Call it the voice of God, the Holy Spirit, the Great Spirit. I just know it. Something's coming out of me. And I'm like, I can't not say it. It's like there's a line in the song, I Believe, do you believe that something can renew your strength? And when you find it, you stop at nothing because it's in everything you say. It's in every word you say. And that describes that feeling for me. And I believe is that song. Every night when we've played it on this last tour, I am like, yes, please let this song hit its mark. And people start singing along, and I can see people's faces, and there's hope. There's hope. Someone's looking back at me with hope in their eyes, like right there with me. Yeah, I believe too. I believe that. That is the buzz. That is amazing. It's bigger than being a quote unquote rock star. It's bigger than getting a big paycheck from a tour. All that shit means nothing if you're not affecting somebody in some way. And that can happen through my music, but it can also happen by me just picking up a phone, turning the camera on and saying, hey, here's a thought for you. Take it or leave it, but I put it out into the world. And I just hope that it does something. And at least if I've tried to do it. That's something. It's better than not doing it. It's better than keeping that shit to myself and going, works for me, don't really care if it affects anyone else. I think it's our duty as human beings, period, not just an artist. As if you've got something that helps you, share it. That's your job. That's why we're here. People always wonder, what is life about? Life is about love. God is love. Here's the fucking nail on the head, the period on the sentence. We are here to learn and to digest and to try to understand what love is. Love is the most divine, profound, perfect thing that we as humans can comprehend. That is the greatest weapon against any darkness or evil or hatred. And if you love honestly yourself and other people, it's just going to happen. You're going to help people. You're going to have that desire to want to help people. And that, to me, that's what it's all about. We are here to learn how to love each other, period. And anything around that, dogma, laws, religion, like all these things that are like telling you all these other things, strip it all away. And that is it right there. There's a single point. Understand and try to give and receive love. That's why we're here, period.
I had an epiphany in this last week. I was talking with some other friends about other things and just things in general. And I thought to myself, as someone was, someone asked me for a favor, and then I put someone in touch with somebody else and some other conversations that we've been having. And I go, and someone's like, oh, you thank you for this and da da da. And I go, I think I just realized I'm a conduit for a lot of other people. And I used to maybe not realize that or not want to give credence to that. And I go, but I think that's kind of my quote unquote superpower, is that like I'm kind of, sounds shitty to say it like this, but it's like, I know I'm a good person. I know a lot of people. If I can connect other people to other good people and just kind of keep making a chain of like strong relationships and all that kind of stuff, there's no way that that's not a good thing. Why not lean into that? And somebody shot me a text back when we were discussing this, and they were like, I'm one of those people too. And that's why you and I get along so great, is because we're able to bring each other to other people and then connect other people. So the more of us that there are that know each other, we can, do more work outwardly and kind of make people happier in the world around us and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of interesting to kind of think about that. And as you were saying that, I was like, I think you are basically a conduit for a lot of people for positivity and happiness and all that kind of other stuff, which will lead me into kind of wrapping this up on my end. Like I said, to start this off, I haven't done a podcast, like actually doing one of these, in over a month. And it feels very like a hole has been missing, because this is sort of a form of therapy for myself. It has been therapeutic to kind of say out loud what I've been dealing with. Beyond that, though, I think having you be a part of the lead up to my 500th episode with some really great heavy conversations with some really great people that I now call friends through doing the show, you constantly over the last few decades have been a constant inspiration for me to follow passions, to be a conduit and to tap into that and to, full circle moment. If you didn't champion integrity, I wouldn't have had a really fucking awesome conversation with Dwight from Integrity. Like, still can't believe that fucking conversation happened, and that I was ready for it at the time because of being a fan, but where I was at in my life and things I'd gone through, I don't think I could have done that conversation when I first started the show. I don't even know that you and I could have had this conversation before everything that I've gone through. We probably could have had something similar, but I think what I've gone through in this last week, it's another reminder of something I say all the time, where things happen when they're supposed to happen. And sometimes it's your duty to kind of be focused and realize what's happening. So when the moment's happening or the thing is happening, you can be like, oh, fuck, this is why these things kind of led to this moment or this thing to happen. And I feel like if we would have done this when you were here in town, we wouldn't have really gotten this deep. We wouldn't have had the time.
Especially on that day. Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, not on that day. And it's a thing to me where I just want to, I'm coming from such a place of gratitude of 500 episodes, 9 years of just doing this thing, putting in the work and showing up. But beyond that, of really being thankful for the time that people give me and the honesty and the vulnerability that people like yourself show on this show to essentially a stranger. But I know that I'm the conduit between whoever I'm having on to hopefully have something that you say that someone else will hear being a fan of you and go, fuck, I needed that. Or it gives me permission to seek help or whatever it is that they take from this. So I thank you so much for coming on and doing this and the conversation we just had. I needed it. I know someone else will need it. And that's why I love this medium.
And
that's what keeps me going.
I need it too. And that's how this works. It's the reciprocation. That's, I love podcasts for that reason. There's a lot of great podcasts out there, but when you get into the depths, like people live way too much on the surface. There's so much to be gained by just going deep. I think people are afraid to go deep, but when you do it, it is the best therapy. And sometimes, I'll be saying something, and as I'm saying it, I'm like, oh shit, eureka. That's the beauty of having good conversation. So continue that conversation because there's a sense of purpose within what you're doing here, no matter what. And again, I'll say it again, money's great and it'll come and go. But if you're doing something that's much bigger than just for financial exchange, that's going to reward you in other ways that will give you a sense of wealth and wellness that finances could never do. So that's what I think life is all about. You obviously have to pay your bills and whatever, but like if you're not doing other things other than just that, you're missing the whole reason we're here. And what you do with this podcast is just God's work, if you will. It really is. Like, I think good conversation, going deep, talking about things that people don't usually talk about, not being afraid to go deep. You're facilitating a much bigger conversation that needs to continue on for anybody who's listening that can latch on to anything that's been said. That's love.
Well, thank you for it's also something I'm working on too, is taking compliments. I think a lot of us don't feel we're worthy of them for a multitude of reasons, but that's something I'm trying to be better at. But it feels almost disingenuous to have you do this part, but is there anything you would like to plug or anything online that you want to promote?
No, just stop paying attention to all the bullshit out there. Stop allowing billionaires and people up in the top to divide us. Look at the things that we have in common as a human race and connect those dots. Make that effort to be a better person for the world and embrace love. God is love. That's it. That's all I got to say, man. You know where I'm at. Find me on the internet.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. And the best of luck to you. Things will get better. I believe that.
Thank you.
All right, my friend.
Have a good night.
You too, brother.
So that was my conversation with Jesse. Want to thank him once again for taking the time to honestly just be there. Obviously, I was going through it. Still kind of going through it. I'm basically now, my wife and I are on the other side of this, having been removed from this chat by about a month now. And, things are kind of getting back to the way they were. It's not as scary and it's still scary. But I think we're on the other side of it now. And I think the thing, as I'm sitting here doing this podcast, thinking about this conversation, thinking about where I was days before of doing this conversation with Jesse and the conversation you just heard, I feel like the things that were said are still mostly true, you know, in the sense that this time of having to be very frugal, it puts things back into perspective of what's important in the relationship. And it's not the things, it's not the trips you go on, it's not all these other things, it's the two of you. And it's the time you put into the relationship, and it's being there for one another when you really need each other. And I think one of the hardest things for me going through this was, selfishly, I guess, feeling like I had made so many bad decisions that in this situation that I couldn't financially just take care of both of us and be like, take as long as you need. Like, she would be able to do that for me. I can't do it back for her. And it just made me feel really bad. Like, I was like, man, maybe I fucked up my life somewhere. Maybe I have just made bad decisions, and this is like the repercussions of my bad decisions. And I know that's not true. And you know, thankfully, I can say that my partner has made me feel very good in my support of them. Because I wonder these things, you know, and I think it's hard. I think it's hard when you've been with your significant other for, I guess, really any stretch of time. But, you know, we're almost 10 years into our marriage and 14 and a half years into our relationship. And to feel like I can't do anything to help her. I think that was the hardest thing I had to go through during all this is, you know, I'd come home and she would just feel down, and it felt like I couldn't do anything to alleviate that for her. And that really fucking sucked. It made me feel so bad that I couldn't take this thing away from her and make her feel better. And that's life. That's real life. You know, I've been kind of dealing with it over the last couple of episodes. You know, I think of discussing things that are really fucking hard to talk about sometimes. And thankfully the guests and I have done that. And hopefully any of you that actually take the time to listen to these, I hope there's something in these that you are able to take away and that's able to help you or someone you know. I guess if there was a silver lining in doing this podcast this long, is that was the silver lining, is at times, you know, I'd ask these questions when my wife was, you know, making the comment about not feeling like she was who she had always been, because the thing she was so mostly identified by, to herself even, was her job, her career. And to just suddenly have it taken away, like, thankfully that's something I've talked to various people about on this show. So I was able to offer some differing perspectives of people who have gone through that. But, you know, I can't do that for her. I can't give her a new job. I can't make her feel what she is feeling. I can't take that away. And that's really fucking hard to see your person going through that. All of that said, if you're still listening, like I said, thank you so much. And really big thank you to Jesse. I needed this conversation. I needed this episode. And I'm just really appreciative that he was willing to go down the rabbit hole with me on this and to kind of open up about his own struggles and such over the last year or so of, you know, his own personal life and marriage and so forth. And means a lot to me. And hopefully it means a lot to all of you that got to hear it and are, like I said, still listening this far in. Start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Killswitch Engage, killswitchengage.com. Killswitch Engage on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is at KSE Official. If you would like to keep up with Jesse, you can find him at Jesse_D_Leach. I know he has a cameo as well. If you would like to hear some words of encouragement, I don't know if he's still doing those, but I know some of the cameos he was doing before were pretty entertaining to check into. So go do that and support the dude. And, you know, he's on Twitter, I against I, EYE against I, and he hasn't been on for quite a while, which is not a big surprise. A lot of people left that app over the last year or two. But this is one of those leading up to episode 500, man. I am so thankful for the guests that I've had leading up to it. A lot of people I don't even think I could have dreamed of putting them together before episode 500. It's just fallen into place. And you know, I preach this so much on the show now of just like, you know, I think things are supposed to happen when they do. And, you know, I even was reminded of that and when trying to keep that philosophy in place in a positive way during all of this time with my wife losing her job, which was just like, maybe this is something else is supposed to happen in that chapter of your life just needed to be closed. And now it's time for the next chapter, whatever that is. And you're supposed to be where whoever accepts you, wherever you end up going, that's where you're supposed to be. And I definitely got to believe that because it just time and time again seems to be more true as I get older. And I genuinely believe that to be a fact. So if you would like to keep up with the podcast, simple enough, Brewtallyspeaking Pod on all your social media platforms. Rate, review, subscribe. You know why that is important. Do such if you can on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Email me at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com if you have any guest suggestions or just any comments or anything. And I want to give a huge shout out to Frankie and the crew over at Rockabilia. Frankie is someone that I've just, like I say week in and week out, is someone I've really gotten to know very well over the last few years of being a sponsor on this podcast. And I'd like to say that they're more than just a sponsor. They are, or he is at least, a really good friend. And even when I had posted the thing, like I said, about how the show was going to kind of go on a hiatus and I just needed to kind of focus on my life, you know, he was one of the first people to call and make sure everything was good. And just another reminder of if you surround yourself with good people, man, it's truly a blessing to have some such great friends and so forth that I've met from doing this podcast, and it's not lost on me. So without further ado, this has been another episode of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. Join me next week where I have Mike Terry of Volumes, formerly of Bury Your Dead, and currently now the new singer of Fire from the Gods. Been after Mike for a while, so I was really excited to get this one done. I will see you all next week, and then we are officially on our way to episode 500. I'll see you all next week. Enjoy the rest of yours.